about this evening. And my name is Joan, Sister Joan Brown, and I am the Executive Director of New Mexico Interfaith Power and Light. And Father Sylvester Tan and I will be kind of co-dialoguing and sharing this evening. And then you'll be broken into small groups where you all can share at a deeper level. And then we'll come back to the large group. And I know we advertise this to go till 8, but we're going to try to keep it closer to an hour and a half. And you don't need to worry about anything. We will just lead you through. If you do have the handout sheet that was sent ahead of time, just pull that up and it may be helpful, especially when we break into the small groups, because we have there the reflection questions, which sometimes are difficult to remember. So we have them right before us. So I just like to remind everybody to stay on mute unless you're actually presenting, which most of you are not at this moment, but when you get into your small groups, you will be all unmuted and can talk to each other. Also, there is a chat box on the side that you can put on. Many of you, under where it says more, you can do a chat, but you don't need to worry about that till later. For our large group gathering after we have small sharing, we'll be using that function. So I just wanted to welcome you all to this Laudato Si ongoing kind of gathering. And we're sort of expanding Laudato Si tonight to include, you know, some exploration of Fratelli Tutti, which is the recent encyclical or teaching document of the church that addresses social connections and economy and care for our common home. So we're very happy to have you. And we're going to begin tonight with a prayer with Judy Traeger.
Hi, it's my favorite prayer. It's from the back of Laudato Si. And it's a prayer for our earth, but you'll see it also covers everything. All-powerful God, you are present in the whole universe and in the smallest of your creatures. You embrace with your tenderness all that exists. Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and beauty. Fill us with peace, that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one. O God of the poor, help us to rescue the abandoned and forgotten of this earth, so precious in your eyes. Bring healing to our lives, that we may protect the world and not prey on it, that we may sow beauty, not pollution and destruction. Touch the hearts of those who look only for gain at the expense of the poor and the earth. Teach us to discover the worth of each thing, to be filled with awe and contemplation, to recognize that we are profoundly united with every creature as we journey towards your infinite light. We thank you, God, for being with us each day. Encourage us, we pray, in our struggle for justice, love, and peace. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judy, for that prayer. So we'd like to begin our evening together with Father Sylvester and myself just offering some reflections. And if you have your handout with you, we'll be following this kind of in order with our conversation with some of these excerpts. But I'd like to just begin us off in kind of a bridge, because some of you have been to some of our other Laudato Si evenings or retreats in person, which we long to do again, and we will at some point in the future. But we wanted to make sure that even though we're moving into a social teaching document tonight, that our care of creation and climate change, everything that's related to that, is not left aside. So when we're talking about tonight community and our common humanity, reclaiming our common humanity, that has to include creation and all creatures. We are not separated from any of that. And so that's why we wanted to just highlight 92 in Laudato Si, which basically says I'll just pick a couple of pieces from this. Every act of cruelty towards any creature is contrary to human dignity. And so it's all interrelated. And then in that particular passage, at the very end, it again reminds us that everything is related. And we're all united as brothers and sisters on an amazing, wonderful pilgrimage. Now, I know we're in challenging times now, and sometimes it may seem like this isn't a wonderful pilgrimage, but there is beauty and delight and joy in each day. And our call to love and to relish love and the connectedness of everyone and everything is part of this wonderful pilgrimage, where we have fond affection and connections with every element, every person, every creature, the winged ones, the sun, the moon, and everything. So with that, and we need to remember that as Father Sylvester kind of unloads for us, unpacks for us, the main theme of Fratelli Tutti, which is the story of the Good Samaritan and who is my neighbor and what does that really mean? So thanks, Father Sylvester.
Well, thank you, Sister Joan. So I hope that you are all familiar with the story of the Good Samaritan. If you're not, it's Luke chapter 10, verses 25 to 37. So Luke chapter 10, 25 to 37. But I'm not going to read that out because our time is short, and I think that all of you are familiar with it. What I'm going to do is jump into if you have your handout, you can look at paragraph 101 from Fratelli Tutti. And the title we've given this is Who is my neighbor and what does this mean? Now, Fratelli Tutti is a very long encyclical. It's actually the longest encyclical that's ever been written. All of chapter 2 is on the Good Samaritan. We're not sharing that because we don't have time, but we are sharing this paragraph, which is actually from chapter 3, paragraph 101, because it takes us to the heart of some of the things that we see in chapter 2. And it'll be very useful for our consideration this evening. Basically, it helps us understand why we don't fully recognize the common humanity of our neighbor. We see in 101, the people walking by the Good Samaritan do not heed their interior summons to serve as neighbors. Why don't they heed their interior summons to act as neighbors? Actually, it's very interesting. They don't listen to that because they're more concerned with their duty. Now, that's really interesting. They're more interested with their duty, their social status, their position within society. And so often we have good reasons for going by the man who is injured, the one in need. And we think, well, of course I have to do this. This is my duty. But one of the things that Fratelli Tutti calls us to do is to see that often our ethics, our morals can be falsely grounded. And that's something we'll see more of this evening. And they can keep us from recognizing the humanity of our neighbor. Who is the one who stops? Pope Francis says that it was a foreigner without place in society. For everybody else, the injured person was a nobody. That's something else we're going to see a lot of. We're going to encounter a lot of people who are nobodies. And we'll ask, why are these people nobodies? Are they really nobodies? What are things that keep them nobodies in my way of understanding? So Pope Francis says more in that paragraph, but that's enough for now. And we'll take this back to Joan, who will introduce the next section of our evening.
Yes. Thank you so much. So with that, we thought it would be really important tonight for us to hear some stories about our brothers and sisters and some environmental justice concerns here in New Mexico. And with this, I want to just give a little introduction. And we're going to tonight, as we explore things, introduce you to two also concerns that you can be engaged in. We'll explain more of those at the end, but as we go along also, one is the Green Amendment and one is community solar. So these stories in ways are dealing with what those two actions that we might do in the state could address some of these injustices to our brothers and sisters who are part of our community here. Just a snapshot, the Green Amendment is to look at environmental health and health of water and land in our communities and in this state. And then the solar, community solar amendment would make it possible to have solar in other communities that are don't have solar, that are economically challenged, and maybe that's why they can't have solar, and addresses energy inequities. So the three stories that we have tonight are taken from different parts of the state. The first one is with the Multicultural Alliance for Safe Environment, and it is a story about just one little aspect of the uranium mining and pollution in the Grants and Gallup uranium mining belt. And we have one gentleman telling that story. The second story is from a film producer here in the state called Kavu. And they have films that they've made about New Mexico and the oil and gas industry. And it's just about some of the challenges that we have. We have an excerpt of that from a family that was affected by a produced water spill. A simple word about produced water: it is really the water that comes up when you make the drilling of the oil or gas location that has all kinds of salt and radioactive material in it. But then that is also mixed with a whole bunch of proprietary chemicals that are put into clean water to inject into the well. Both of those things together are this water that arises, which is really toxic. And then the third story is about some folks with Gallup Solar, which is a wonderful project getting solar panels in Navajo land. So in a different kind of way, it's addressing the needs of community and solar. And we're so grateful to Carlos for putting this short video together. And we have all three of those segments together. So just kind of take notes. And as you're looking at this, maybe kind of keep in mind what Father Sylvester noted. Is there any time that I have just kind of said, oh, I can't, that's not really important. Those people are dealing with whatever, and it's not part of my world, not part of my life. How do I see myself in this parable of the Good Samaritan? What in these stories maybe touch you? What about them maybe makes you feel uncomfortable as well? So thank you so much, and we'll view this together.
Hello, my name is Larry King. I'm 62 years old, and I've been involved with this grassroots organization about uranium issues, addressing uranium issues and uranium legacy, because I live in the midst of uranium, an abandoned uranium mines, the tailing spills of July 16, 1979. When I was working as the underground surveyor, there was one day I was called out. My supervisor told me to stay on surface, don't go underground. We need to go over to the mill site. There was a lot of commotion there, a lot of people. You could see a lot of people from the higher ups. So I started looking around too on the dike there, and I noticed huge cracks. And they were big enough to put my hand in there. The cracks were about that wide. And when you look down, it was pitch black. So I knew that those cracks were way down. We just got back into the vehicle. He said, let's go back. And we went back to the office at the mine site. And that was that. Kind of heard from my department that there was the dam had broken. I said, wow, where? And so after I got off shift and I was driving by and I looked in that direction, and it was in the same area where I saw those huge cracks. And there was a huge gaping hole. Over 94 million gallons of radioactive and toxic water that was released. And I've seen, I kind of remember an image in my head after the next day when I drove by there, where it in the wash, where the highway that goes up to the mine site, there's a portion right by my house where it crosses, and I look into the riverbed, and huge sludge, and it was a catastrophe through that wash. The riverbed, innocent people that had nothing to do with the mine. How many people got exposed to all this toxic waste that was left behind?
It's like 2:38 in the morning. And then I heard this. And I was like, that doesn't sound good, because we've got all these operations right across the street from us, and I didn't know what was going on. This was a new sound that I'd never heard before.
Grabbed my jacket, grabbed my clothes, and was going out the door, and then I could see it shooting over the top of the telephone pole out there and raining down on us. And I'm going, oh my God, what do I need to do? And I'm panicked, and Penny's out here in her nightgown gathering all the animals up and shoving them in the
Chicken
little
coop.
chicken coop back
Trying to
there.
get them
And
out of this
I
rain.
dial 911, and then comes the fire department, the Otis Volunteer Fire Department come out here, and he runs by me and the meter's going off, and I go, do we need to evacuate? And he says, oh no, it's not explosive, it's flammable.
Yeah,
And you could smell the gas, you could smell this horrific odor,
And
and
it
you
was
could hear
burning
hear
our
the
skin and
burbling,
our
and
eyes. And
we're both coated in the stuff, and we're trying to deal with it. Oh my God, we just got sprayed with produced water. And then I start reading about what produced water is, and then I go, oh, that's chemical waste. That's like hazardous waste. Well, the long-lasting effects for Penny have been the rashes, has been the nosebleeds, have been constant headaches. And then she just
we can have our electricity from the solar system right within our area, rural area where there's no electricity. We can have electric within our area by solar power. So get involved with our solar energy, alternative resource.
I'm Eunice James, and I'm from Rehoboth. I got interested in solar energy because I think that is one of the things that we can use out on the reservation. People talk about wattage and how energy is, formed and so forth. I don't think I can, fathom or get that into my system, but if I really try to, think about it and, educate myself or have educations like, with Gallup Solar, I thought about that. And so that's why I came into the group.
I think one of the things is helping the people that up in the community where there's no power line, so line is available, and that's one thing. The other one is the people in the lower income, and they're struggling with their utility bills, and I think that's one thing that that the solar can really help.
Drove me to seek alternative energy is energy sovereignty. Especially in the surrounding areas of Gallup, you see a lot of people that need to regain the power to the people. So this is what this is. This is a step towards the future, a future of energy sovereignty.
Okay, well, thank you. And I hope we all appreciated that video. I'm going to say a quick something to just quickly look at 105 and 107, and then Joan will tell us a little bit more about what we just saw. One of the challenges for us is that we live in an individualistic consumer society, and we think in those terms because of forces that are systemic, that precede us. We're taught all these truths about the world, about the way the world works, and these truths need to be questioned. At the heart of this is, like I said, the individualistic consumer society. So if you look at 105, individualism does not make us more free, more equal, more fraternal. And the next line, radical individualism is a virus, okay? Remember, Pope Francis just released this about a month ago. Actually, if you didn't know that, he just released this about a month ago. So he also talks about COVID, but he's saying this is a worse virus. And then he makes reference to consumerism in the next line when he talks about its consequences. This consumerist individualism makes us believe that everything consists in giving free rein to our own ambitions, as if by pursuing ever greater ambitions and creating safety nets, we would somehow be serving the common good. That's a common presumption, the invisible hand, if everybody acts for their own benefit, then the common good will be preserved. No, that's not what we're seeing. And then in the next paragraph, well, in 107, which we don't have here, Francis says that every human being has the right to live with dignity and develop integrally. But then look at the first words of 108. Some societies accept this principle in part, but do they put it into action? And in fact, they don't. We say a lot, we play a lot of lip service to things, but we don't actually act as if they were true. We think they're true, we don't act as if they're true. So the last line of 108, the last sentence is really important. What we need are states and civil institutions that are present and active, that look beyond the free and efficient working of certain economic, political, or ideological system, and are instead primarily concerned with individuals and the common good. Just ask yourself, what are our big institutions interested in, whether it be banks or political organizations or government organizations? Often they're looking at those other things. We need to get back to the human. We need to get back to individuals and the common good. And now Joan is going to link that to what we just heard.
Right. So thanks, Sylvester. So yeah, so I want you to kind of go back to those stories that you just heard. And two things. Recall, did you see that story of the Good Samaritan anywhere in those stories, and them being walked by or not listened to? And was it because of some of these forces for individualism rather than the common good? One that struck me hugely was Larry King, when he was talking about the cracks that were in this dam holding all of this uranium waste that was supposed to be holding it there so it wouldn't go down the Rio Puerco and the stream and hurt the people and the wildlife, etc. And the cracks were huge. And he thought, well, this doesn't seem good. But his supervisor, the person in charge, said, well, let's go back to the shop. You know, we're not going to do anything about this. And then it burst. So there was an opportunity to waylay that and to be this force for the common good, but that did not happen. In the story with Penny and her husband Dee, they were being sprayed by produced water. They had never seen this before. It was in the middle of the night. The 911 folks came and they said, oh, don't worry, it's only flammable. And they just let it go. And I thought, you know, that was letting the neighbors just kind of, their brothers and sisters and the animals, they were concerned about all their animals, just kind of be there with this. I mean, the whole thing could have exploded. Fortunately, that didn't happen, but they were sprayed. So with that, we see those examples of being caught in my tunnel or our smaller tunnel instead of that of the common good. So with that, I just wanted to, again, just say a little bit about, those are legacy issues that we have, but we can move into the future with a different way of caring for one another. And one of those ways we can do that is with the Green Amendment that is going to be in the 2021 legislative session. And it's very simple in one form. It basically says any decision that civic leaders at any level make has to take into consideration human health and clean air, water, and land to care for our sacred creation. So if we had that in place, these instances of these two stories that we had might not have happened. It might have been different. How can we move into the future holding the common good, you know, with rather than just individualism? So Sylvester, go ahead.
Sure. Well, a lot of people might say, well, that's very pie in the sky-ish, you know, humanity, whatever. And this is just not the role of business, right? In fact, I went to a university with a large business school, and I remember something that I heard there was kind of off-putting to me. I heard them say that in good business ethics, the primary responsibility of the people running the business is to their shareholders. Okay, now, not everybody agrees with that, but I want to point out that that's something that maximizing value for their shareholders. That is one perspective, not the only perspective. It may not even be the dominant perspective anymore, I hope, please God, but it is a perspective. And I want to point out that if you hold to that understanding of business ethics, when you do things that recognize the humanity of other people that are actually more sustainable over the long term, these people would say you're not acting ethically because you need to maximize value for your shareholders, and maybe they won't live for the long term, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's not a good vision, and it's not even good business. And so sustainability here is really important, and it's something that Pope Francis gets. It's something that's in this document. It's in Laudato Si. And let's look at the text 115. If we're going to be sustainable, even in our business practices, we need to realize that we're primarily a human community. We're at service of one another. We're responsible for the fragility of others as we build a common future. Solidarity finds concrete expression in service. Just quick note, there's a note, word solidity, the opposite of solidity is fragmentation. And so he's concerned about how all of this fragments and divides us. The last last words in that paragraph are, we do not serve ideas, we serve people. Now some people are like, oh, that's an interesting idea, but that's not a very good idea. The point is not which idea is better. The point is, these are people, right? and let's start with their human reality. Key paragraph is the next one we have there, 123, because somebody's like, well, okay, if business isn't about profits or maximizing shareholder values or whatever, what is it? What is it for? And there's actually, in this paragraph, which is a little bit abbreviated, we actually have an answer to that question. And I'll read you the full sentence. It's after note 102. Business abilities, which are a gift from God. So Pope Francis is saying businesses are good. You know, these abilities, they're something we need. Business abilities, which are a gift from God, should always be clearly directed to the development of others and to eliminating poverty, especially through the creation of diversified work opportunities. So, well, now that's the role of our charity. You know, you could have a business that depletes, you know, an ecosystem, and then has an environmental charity on the side. You know, just to kind of, but no, it should have been sustainable to begin with. And so we'll pass that back to Joan, because she has some things to say about that.
Yeah, so that last point was really important, because you know, we need to look at systemic change or things that are going to be large changes that affect the common good or a lot of people. And with this particular looking at business, what comes to my mind was that story that you just heard about the folks in Gallup Solar and their interviews. And they're talking about having solar, and they're learning how to put it on themselves and create it because they don't have electricity. 40,000 homes in Navajo land have no electricity. And a lot of that is because of what Sylvester was talking about. Well, this is not feasible. It's not economically sound to have energy for all of these people in Navajo Nation. I mean, they're rural, they're distant, but the fact is there are many parts of the state that are rural and very distant, like in the South, I mean, in the East, and those people have electricity, but this is the Navajo Nation. So one might think, well, maybe part of this is environmental racism. So Carla asked me to address legacy issues. Legacy issues are those things that have been in the past, but we continue to carry forth in the future. And with the issue of energy and in Navajo Nation, we might say that there's legacy issues there, and it might be partly racial injustice or the Good Samaritan story. Well, I'm going about my business and you know, that's way out there. I mean, I don't have time. I can't really be concerned about that or those folks. So in the Gallup Solar interviews, I was really impressed by the young man who talked about energy sovereignty, which is this common good, is this not fractured, as Sylvester was saying, but a solidity, a kind of a solution. So I think that that's really important to look at. So just think of that Gallup Solar story as we're looking at this. And part of the reason we haven't had community solar in the state, it's gone through 4 different legislative sessions, but it has not been popular with some of our utilities because maybe this is not, would take some of the share of their funds or whatever reason. So just to note that we will be working on community solar again. It's not a simple thing in our state, but we will be working on that again. With that, Sylvester, why don't you take us on to our next and our last section that we're going to talk about before we break into small groups?
Sure, we've put a heading for the last 3 paragraphs that's called "Proper Civic Engagement is Not Dirty Politics, but a way to work for our common humanity." In the broader section, Pope Francis admits that, you know, a lot of us are tired of politics and we see it as a bad thing, but actually he's saying that's because it's been perverted. We need to recover the true dignity and reality of what politics ought to be. In 177, he says, politics must not be subject to the economy. Now that sounds like a crazy, you know, I think of, you know, I'm sure he meant well, but James Carville, you know, it's the economy, stupid, you know, great guy, but that's the way a lot of us think. Maybe that's the way a lot of us vote. But Pope Francis says, well, no, think about the human person first. And yes, economics is related to the human person, but don't put that at the center. Put human person at the center. After note 158, we see economics without politics cannot be justified, since this would make it impossible to favor other ways of handling the various aspects of the present crisis. You know, our worldview says the first solution, first thing, you know, what's the economics of this? That shouldn't be the first question. He says, well, we need an interdisciplinary approach, which is broader than economics. And he says that that's going to be part of a healthy politics, a healthy, broad politics. And we also have to recognize that what can help and what can't. Last sentence in this paragraph is, we can't expect economics to do this, to create this healthy politics, to overcome the things that need to be overcome, because it's not part of its logic. Nor can we allow economics to take over the real power of the state. So just to recognize that a lot of our realities are beholden to these economic interests. They have their place, but it's not at the center. The human person is at the center. And then we've offered paragraph 182. Now the person 182 is also an important worldview shifter in a sense, because Pope Francis says we need a new type of awareness about our place in the world and who we are. You know, when somebody asks us who we are, actually this is not something that indigenous peoples do. They actually introduce themselves in relationship to the land and a relationship to other people. But many of us will introduce ourselves in a very individualistic way, as if I stand alone. None of us stands alone. In fact, Pope Francis says here, as he said elsewhere in the document, after note 171, each of us is fully a person when we are part of a people. At the same time, there are no peoples without respect for the individuality of each person. So in other words, the deepest reality of my personhood doesn't come from me being an isolated individual, but as an individual, as part of a community in relationship to others, as part of a people. And so if we bear in mind what we heard at the beginning from Laudato, see, that's a cosmic reality. Remember, as indigenous people identify themselves in a relationship to other people and to the land. That's exactly what Pope Francis is calling for here, which is also very biblical, by the way. And then finally, 197 offers us something that we in the Ignatian world would incorporate in what we call an examination of conscience. And so Pope Francis says, well, if we look at it in the right direction, right understanding, politics is something noble and it's something I should be part of. So, but I usually haven't been doing it, you know, in a positive way. We can think about the way I vote, but also we can think about the way I interact with other people. And so Pope Francis says, well, okay, ask yourself, why am I doing this or that thing with its consequences? What is my real life? Why am I buying this thing? And then he gives a couple questions that indicate false motivations. For as time goes on, the questions will not be these false motivations. How many people endorsed me? How many voted for me? How many had a positive image for me, right? Those are, in our image conscious society, we tend to think in that way. The real questions, the real and potentially painful questions will be, how much love did I put into my work? What did I do for the progress of our people? What mark did I leave on the life of society? What real bonds did I create? And so on. There are lots of really good questions. And so I think these are questions, well, especially for people who are leaders, but questions for all of us. So Joan, if you'd like to.
Yeah, just a couple things. You know, all of this, there's so much we could talk about for a long time, but we want to get to the small groups. But I wanted to say, you know, a couple things. In our state, you know, that we're really pretty dictated by extractivism in our state for our state budget. About 30% of the budget, and much of that goes to our education system, comes from oil and gas industry at this point. And we're in difficult straits now because of the COVID and the economic downturn with that. So just to say that with that, then, we have an overbalanced concern, it's not overbalanced, overextended concern for economics in the state, irregardless sometimes of human health, of the biosystems, of our water, of the air, and the future generations. And it's not to say that we can ignore the economics, we can't, but a healthy economy really means a healthy community, less money on health concerns. We have water and air into the future and for future generations. So, but this economic interest oftentimes really does overly influence political leaders in our state. An example, so in the southeast part of the state, NMIPL is working with Citizens Caring for the Future. The film that you saw was one of the families part of this. And this last weekend, we had a meeting with them and one of our representatives in the state, not from their region, but another region, who was working on economic transition and sustainability in the state. She wanted to hear their ideas, what thoughts they had, what their wisdom is, what they would do from their frontline community. And it was a very wonderful, amazing conversation with incredible ideas that they had never been able to share with their political representatives in their part of the state, because there's an old mindset that we just have to deal with this one industry that we have as it is, and this economics. And they had, even though they had tried to talk to them, were never listened to. They were very grateful. They were listened to, but they felt the water was listened to. They felt the birds were listened to because many of them are birders. They felt all of this. So I think, again, those questions that Sylvester was noting at the end, maybe those could be questions that when we're talking to our civic leaders, we might ask of them. We're offering these excerpts tonight because as we move into our own faithful citizenship and civic responsibility, we need to talk to those people that we have as leaders when we're working with concerns. And I think it's very important for people of faith and conscience to come at that from these foundational statements and even new documents that we have, to pose these deeper questions, because we are in huge challenges, collapse in our culture, society, in many ways at this moment. We have to begin to look at things differently with different worldviews. And this might help us do that and share that with others. So with that, Sylvester, if it's okay, I think we're going to just break people into their small groups. But before you go, you'll be broken in automatically. But the first 5 minutes when you arrive in your group is just going to be quiet. Your facilitator will somehow let you know when that time is for reflection is finished. The time for the quiet is so that you can listen more deeply what it is that you might have heard or felt. What was the Spirit saying to you tonight, speaking to your heart? It might be in something an image that you can't get out of your mind, or a word, or it might be something that made you uncomfortable, or something that made you come alive. So you're going to be reflecting for 5 minutes, just listening. And then the first time that you share, your facilitator will help you. You'll be giving your name, where you're from, and what touched you so far from the presentation tonight. So blessings, everyone. And after about 30 minutes in your small group, we will come back to the large group. So thank you.